switch gears, and I'm going to invite Anand Carr from TIPCO to kind of talk about what is prescriptive analytics. So, Anand Carr, over to you.
Good afternoon. I'm Ironkar from TIPCO, and thanks for joining my session today. In this webinar, I will be attempting to share my perspective of a very interesting and intriguing question. Is the future of predictive analytics prescriptive? Different people might have different perspectives on this. I will try to share mine as a developer of enterprise scales analytics solutions for the last 2 decades. And on the way, I will use some of the work we do at TIBCO as examples. Just a quick disclaimer, whatever I present as part of this webinar is for information purposes only and is confidential to TIBCO. I'm sure all of you are aware of the continuum from descriptive to prescriptive analytics. Descriptive analytics converts data to information and presents it to us in a meaningful way, based on which business decisions can be taken. On the other end of the spectrum, in prescriptive analytics, the AI or ML algorithm takes into account a lot of complex patterns in data and attempts to take decisions on your behalf. This is particularly advantageous when there are humongous amounts of meaningful data that can be churned for deeper insights, which is beyond the computation power of an average human, brain or capability. Algorithms of today, especially the ones driven by deep learning, are able to detect and hold these complex rules or patterns and take very complex decisions based on them. So we can truly say that prescriptive analytics has reached a stage today where it converts data to information to insights to knowledge. But does it really create pearls of wisdom? Let's try to understand this through some examples of solutions built on TIBCO products and platforms. This particular solution developed on TIBCO Spotfire visualizes what's happening on multiple KPIs in a particular part of the geography. Once the geography or area of interest is selected, it shows a detailed visualization of the information in a very dynamic way. TIBCO solutions are unique where you can visualize not only static data, but also data and information in motion. This provides a detailed visual breakdown of a single data point, thus providing enormous amounts of clarity to the decision maker. Visual analytics, we think at TIBCO, is important. As we all know, a picture speaks 1,000 words. In the next solution, which is depicted in this next illustration, if you select a particular set of events or data points, the algorithms further drill down into the data corresponding to these events, analyze them to tell what might be the reasons for what happened. This is truly in the domain of diagnostic analytics. This is an extremely important segment of analytics as well, because it gives you extremely rich and actionable insights around which business scenarios to choose and which ones to avoid. A typical example from a very recent phenomenon is that of a COVID analytics dashboard. Once drilled down, it can tell frontline workers the various reasons why the COVID virus has spread in a certain way among certain ethnic groups or in a particular geo. In the analytics continuum, we then move on to a stage where we forecast what might really happen either in the future or in completely unknown scenarios. We develop a complex model, which is also called a machine learning model or a statistical model, which learns from either historical data or unseen data and tries to predict an outcome either in the future or in a previously unknown scenario. This is where we truly enter the predictive domain. This becomes very interesting at the next stage where we not only try to predict the outcome, but also try predict multiple possible outcomes in various scenarios that a business process might face in the real world. This is where the concepts of predictive analytics comes together with optimization to create scenario simulations. While predictive analytics predicts an outcome in an unknown or in a future scenario, there can be many variables where the which changes the scenario altogether and hence the prediction as well. So it really becomes important for us to realize what are those parameters which change the scenario and what will be the effect of that on the predictions themselves. A very good example that a lot of you would have come across is the concept of a digital twin. Digital twins are data driven simulations primarily used in the manufacturing space to simulate all possible scenarios and their outcomes using just large amounts of data, specifically IoT and sensor data, and the complex relationship and patterns that emerge from them are analyzed and real-time decisions taken on the basis of that. This is where we enter the truly prescriptive domain. A lot of processes utilizing digital twins can become automatic or autonomous. Robotic process automation is one such area. Another area is that of autonomous quality control, where various input parameters are controlled in real time to ensure that the quality of the finished products remains within a certain quality threshold. This is being extremely used extensively by industries like electricity generation, where they have a very strict model driven, analytics driven quality control on the input parameters like temperature, moisture of the input goods that goes into the production of thermoelectric power to be able to generate electricity of a certain quality and nature. The same objective can be achieved to a limited extent by statistical process control and probably in some domains like pharma where it is extensively used. Statistical process control tries to achieve the similar objectives but with a combination of diagnostic and predictive analytics instead of prescriptive. Many of you would have known or probably even driven driverless cars, where real time scenarios created from sensors and the video feed that comes in the form of input data from cameras and other sensors in the car. The job of the intelligent brain or the algorithm behind running the autonomous car or the driverless car is to process all of that data in real time and process it, take decisions, and feed it back to the car controls like the steering and the brakes and the engine itself. So far, so good. But imagine a situation where the ecosystem is so complex that we don't even know what scenarios might emerge in the future. Completely new situations, variables, parameters, and data might be generated. This can be more complex than even self-driving cars. In self-driving cars, the AI algorithm can take some autonomous decisions with a certain degree of accuracy, which are probably 99% true, accurate in most of the scenarios that the real world throws at the car. But there are still some situations where it might fail. So while prescriptive analytics has advanced leaps and bounds, and there is no doubt about it can forecast outcomes in most of the scenarios, there is still that 1% left where Mother Nature throws at us and still remains unresolved. How do we solve them? Interestingly, we realized that a perfect analytics or AI driven solution needs the power of AI driven analytics, but augmented with human intelligence and intuition. Let's look at this last scenario. TIBCO is a partner of the current and long standing champions in Formula One racing, the Mercedes F1 team. As one can imagine, there's very little room for error in F1 racing. We at TIBCO do some cutting edge real time analytics that prescribes every movement of the F1 car being driven at close to a speed of 400 kilometers per hour. However, that is still not enough to win races, and that's why we have some of the best drivers driving them. Our data and analytics solutions process the data that's coming in from the IoT sensors, and then based on the insights that gets generated, we give the drivers or the pilots very deep insights in real time on their earphones, which allow them to take some split second decisions that win or lose races. That's a classic example of augmented analytics. This is driven by TIBCO Connected Intelligence. There are multiple events that happen in an enterprise at different times, and each event generates data. Data at various speeds in various formats, both are structured and unstructured. Data needs to be stored, integrated, monitored before we can do analytics and act on it. The insights and actions might also be consumed at different frequencies by different downstream apps and stakeholders. To do this seamlessly, TIBCO relies upon its connected intelligence framework and a suite of product platforms. Our connect layer of product does the API management and application integration both upstream and downstream. Our unified set of products and platforms ensures that the data is ingested, processed at whatever speed they're coming in, and they are made ready to be consumed by downstream analytics applications. Finally, our predict platforms like Spotfire, Data Science Workbench, and Streambase integrate with all open source and cloud platforms to provide the best in class, cutting edge AI and ML solutions, which range from descriptive to prescriptive. The biggest advantage, though, is that this is not a black box. You can see information and insights in motion through our Spotfire visual interface, which is much more than just a BI and visualization tool. So, where are we moving in the predictive to prescriptive analytics journey? Let's revisit the question. Is predictive going to become prescriptive in future? As I mentioned before, there are multiple decisions taken at different frequencies based on the different kinds, types, and frequencies of data that gets generated by the events in an organizational process and on the business use case that needs to be solved. Descriptive analytics use cases form the foundation of decision making. It gives good, confident feel to the data scientists as well as to the business decision makers. And it involves a large amount of human intervention too. Diagnostics provide food for thought to decision makers for multiple scenarios possible. For example, in the use case of readmission patterns of patients in a hospital, diagnostics into the data is extremely critical. While predictive analytics might predict the possible patients who are most prone to getting readmitted, diagnostics give the key drivers and the factors for the same. Today, advances in machine learning and deep learning gives us a huge edge in making prescriptive decisions driven by analytics, and we are seeing an increasing number of use cases where analytics is directly giving us solution with minimal human intervention, especially where real-time decisions need to be taken at a very fast pace, like in manufacturing or supply chain or quality control scenarios. However, we do have to realize that there will and still exists a lot of use cases in business problems like marketing ROI optimization, and fraud detection and next best customer action, which will need human interpretation, intervention, and wisdom on top of the analytics driven insights to act upon. The future, hence, as I perceive it, is that of augmented analytics, augmenting human knowledge with machine intelligence in various proportions as demanded by the business use case scenario will yield the optimum results. I think an attendee in the earlier panel discussion made an interesting observation about AI decreasing the human touch. And that's exactly what augmented analytics tries to address. The combination of automated real-time data processing and intelligence generation, while today is possible, it still requires a lot of human touch to be able to make those analytics solutions really actionable in the real world. At TIBCO, our suite of products in the connected intelligence framework drive all of this journey from data to insights to action and the learning thereof into a hyperloop, which we call hyper-converged analytics. Increasingly, prescriptive algorithms are becoming more powerful. It will help automate a lot of decisions. But for every automated decision, more integration of human knowledge and wisdom in the form of augmented analytics will help organizations move up the analytics value chain, helping them to become visionaries and much more and leaders in their respective domains. TIPCO makes this happen through our connected intelligence platform by combining the power of connect, unify, and predict to really unlock the potential of real-time and batch data for organizations for making faster and smarter decisions. So with that, I come to an end to my presentation, and thanks for letting me share my perspective on this topic. Thanks again for listening, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Aaron Carr. I think that was very insightful. So let me just look at if the audience has any questions and why they're sort of thinking of what they want to do. So you talked about augmented analyticals and prescriptive analytics. And prescriptive analytics, the way I kind of saw it was, how do you make something happen? So in the world of the hyper personalization, how do you sort of get the consumer to act in a certain way? Could you give us some more insight on how you see those two things connected, the augmented and sort of using, do you believe that using augmented analytics is when you really drive that hyper personalization? What is your view?
Yeah, absolutely. Today, I think personalization has reached a stage where we see the classic examples of how social media uses personalization. Uh, we go and consume media either on YouTube or Facebook or other areas, even in the retail segment. Most of the retail and in retail banking and a lot of areas where customers are involved, hyper personalization has reached a stage where algorithms uh, consume historical data, real time data. If you do something real time on a travel website or on a media website, it takes that data and creates real time intelligent prescriptions for you. But at the same time, there are data privacy issues. There are specifically, to take the example of social media, there are a lot of issues about how it affects the policy making of different countries, whether it adheres to the while the prescriptive algorithm makes a recommendation, whether it adheres to or it disrupts the privacy issues, or it creates congregations of people who can incite violence. So a lot of these things really needs to be looked at through the lens of a human eye, and hence augmentation is something that is applicable. This is just one example that is applicable to every industry. I took the example of Formula One racing in my presentation. I mean, we have done prescriptive and automated almost the whole Formula One car operations. But still, we realize that the driver or the pilot is the most important, and that guy needs to take decisions in real time. So there are enough and more examples based on the domain and the use cases where these two come together to deliver really the true power of analytics augmented with human intelligence.
Fantastic. So thank you very much, Aaron Carr, for that sharing from a TIPCO perspective.